Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us for our first ever LinkedIn Live session. Today, we're going to be diving headfirst into what's happening in the news, dissecting the hype and sharing insights that will hopefully leave leaders like you empowered and informed about those really important decisions. So whether you're a seasoned leader looking for a fresh perspective or you're just getting started in your career, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Darren Bolton, Chief Creative Officer here at Korn Ferry, and today I'm joined by Alan Guarino, co-founder and vice chairman of our CEO and board services practice. You've probably seen him on the news. He's one of our most brilliant minds, transforming the way leaders think and tackle the business world today. Together, the question we're going to be exploring is, why are a lot of CEOs not necessarily playing to win? But here's the twist. We're not just here to talk at you. There's no fun in that. We want you to be a part of the conversation. So send your questions in via the chat function and I'll put them to Alan as we go along. Alan, thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here.
Darren, it's good to be here. I hope we don't lose you to a major network after you become famous as the host here today.
I'm sure it's just a matter of time, Alan. A matter of time.
Absolutely.
This is my 15 minutes of fame.
Well, maybe you can find a good recruiter out there that can help you make the transition. We won't let that happen.
No, of course not. Of course not. I would never turn my back on Korn Ferry. I'm sure our audience is super busy. So, Alan, let's waste no more time and we'll dive straight in. You said early in your career you had a lot of fun working with strong leaders who always played to win. So, what's changed?
Well, what's changed in terms of playing to win? Well, some would look at it as maybe playing not to lose. It's not an easy answer, Darren, and it's an observation, and it's something that I think's been evolving clearly for at least the last decade or more. We just came out with a write-up about a month ago referencing some research that said that CEOs are less than pleased with about 1/3 of their direct reports. So think about being the leader in a military operation or a coach of a sports team. You really are kind of managing risk. And I say you get pretty reluctant to go for it when you may have concerns about all of your players. So I think one of the dynamics here is the issue that leaders today are perhaps a little less confident in the individuals that are working with them to accomplish the mission. And there's a host of reasons for that.
Sure. And so, Alan, I guess the business environment is much harder today. So why haven't companies kind of positioned themselves to win? Is that an oversight on their behalf?
Well, it takes time for organizations to evolve to a new playing field. So I think back 20 years ago, we had this similar situation when it came to what we were asking CFOs to do in terms of finance. So when you think back 20 years ago, the CFOs of that era were trained by CFOs who were trained by CFOs who started their careers in the 50s. The finance function was very different than it is today and it was 20 years ago. And so what I use this analogy of we were calling on finance leaders in those days to stop looking out the rearview mirror, partner up with CEOs, and help those CEOs push forward in a commercial strategy. And I have to tell you that many CFOs of that era recoiled, saying, wait a second, I was basically taught to close the books. My job was to look through the rear view mirror. My job was to make sure that we were buttoned up on our income statement and our balance sheet, and we had our financial operations in place. Now, all of a sudden, you want me to pivot to being a quasi CEO, commercial, visionary, partnering with the CEO? Wow. And so I think what's happened here is that the need for change is in a different area of the company. CFOs have now fully evolved. Many of them meet the requirement of being that great partner, looking out the front windshield and not looking out the rearview mirror. We now need that within another part of the organization, which I think is within HR, and HR has been moving towards this.
Sure. And I guess, how can companies today kind of set themselves up to win? What's the secret sauce?
Yeah. Well, it's an extension of the analogy that I just gave you around CFOs and how we ask them to evolve and be more powerful partners with CEOs and their colleagues on the executive committee. So the other one I'll give you is let's think back 30 years. 30 years ago, this organization that we now call the tech organization of the company was basically called data processing. Wow. I don't think there's a CEO today or a top leader today that would tell you that their tech organization isn't absolutely critical to the execution of the strategy. AJ Lafley held a conference out at P&G headquarters post his retirement. I believe it was about 10 years ago. I was asked to give a small introductory keynote to the organization that was sponsoring. There were about 100 CEOs in the audience, and I asked them to raise their hand if they could state that without the tech organization of the company accomplishing its objectives, they would not have been able to achieve their objectives and their strategy. And at that time, every CEO raised their hand and said it was true. There was no way they would have been successful if their tech organization hadn't been able to fully deliver. And so what that tells us is that tech evolved over the period of years from when it was data processing to when it was critical to the execution of the business strategy, and it was able to fill the gap.
Right.
Well, at that same conference, I said, raise your hand if you could make the same statement regarding your HR organization. Have you empowered them, and are they critical? Without HR achieving its objectives, would you have failed? Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that very few CEOs raised their hand in that particular situation, stating the criticality of HR. Not that they didn't think HR was important, but you see, these CEOs have never seen, or few have ever seen, HR as a critical partner, empowered, funded, and strategic, and able to move the needle. Sure. It does all the important things that HR has always done. Yeah, but like CFOs the years ago, we want them to do things differently. And I've been blessed in the last 10 or 15 years to work with a couple of incredible CHROs who have done this. And I won't name names, but they're out there and they have done it. So the new frontier, though, is indeed HR is going to need to be empowered by CEOs to become the organization that can drive the human capital solution so that the company can accomplish its mission.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And I suppose on that note as well, I mean, we were talking about this the other day, and this kind of question popped up. So, what do you think about leaders who think they can do this all by themselves? How does that kind of, what's the approach there, or what's your message to them?
I say today, without question, that CEOs don't run companies. Teams run companies. And so in order for a CEO to be successful or a leader to be successful, they absolutely have to be able to delegate and to empower and to basically serve as the orchestra leader as opposed to playing any particular instrument.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. And this HR imperative and culture of playing to win, it's obviously a conscious decision. So what about the board? Are they bought into it? Are they supporting this approach?
So I have the experience of serving on a public board and working with many corporate boards, and I can tell you that I've seen good progress directionally. For example, I can remember boards less than a decade ago calling the compensation committee the Comp and Personnel Committee. So thankfully, they've gotten rid of the personnel word and they've realized that it's human resources at minimum. So now we're seeing them called the Comp and Human Resources Committee. Seeing some getting even better and more right, calling themselves the Comp and Human Capital Committee. Because let's face it, there's two forms of capital that enable wealth and enterprise value growth. And that's the human capital of the company and the financial capital of the company. We've always empowered audit at the board level to be very important. We're now empowering the HR and compensation committee of the company to be very important. So here's the caveat. Just like many CEOs today who grew up seeing technology make a huge difference in executing the strategy, throwing money at technology allows you to succeed and win as a CEO. That's true historically. Boards saw it as well. They're maybe a half a generation behind the CEOs that they're currently working with, right? They're older typically, and therefore they've seen less of HR having an impact than HR actually has the potential to deliver. So with that, boards need to really start to raise the importance of this on their agenda in more than just words. Start questioning, what is the HR budget? How many dollars per employee are we committed to the HR organization? And what is the best practice metric? And I bet you it's probably 30% less than what it would need to be to truly fund strategic HR activities that will move the needle. And I kid often to say, well, let's just take a little bit from the tech budget, shift it over to the HR budget. Tech can live without it. A lot of my tech leader friends are not happy with that. But the money has to come from somewhere, and HR needs budget in order to do these empowering strategic activities that move the needle. And the last thing I'll say is that I think we ought to think about HR as a business unit, not as a function. And the concept there is, for example, why is it the chief HR officer? Why isn't it the division head of human capital solutions as a title? Why aren't they playing that role with that appropriate labeling to really make the statement around what HR can do?
Great. I'm just trying to see if there's any questions in the chat that we need to ask. It's obviously a really interesting topic, and it's something that we're all really keen to dig deeper into. I mean, as far as the board go, do you think they understand the potential of those HR team that they can offer the organization? Can they even get their head around that yet? Is there something, is it such a new thing that they're yet to really understand the potential and then push that forward?
We've always said talent is our most important resource. It's been coming out of our mouth for 40 years, maybe more. We're just now, I think, starting to understand how true that is. And now we have to walk the talk, which means that the boards need to get smarter about this.
Okay, great. I'm pretty, we're running out of time. We wanted to kind of keep this short and snappy, so we're going to kind of wrap up there. But are there any final thoughts you want to share before we finish up, Alan?
Honestly, I think the final thought is to just really understand that technology is important, and without well-executed technology strategy, a company will lose. I'm not so sure today that a well-executed technology strategy alone, without a properly balanced and orchestrated human capital strategy, will enable a company to win, as it probably has enabled companies to win over the last decade. Basically, tech is not enough. I think we're now in the human capital age.
Sure. Exciting stuff. So thank you, Alan. That was super insightful. Hopefully we can do this again soon. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, so thank you very much.
Darren, thanks again. I appreciate it. And remember, don't take any of those calls from those recruiters for those networks.
I might need a little bit more practice until that point. But anyway, thanks very much. And also a massive thanks to all of you out there for joining us today. We really appreciate that. If you're interested in diving deeper into today's topic, Alan has written a number of pieces on this, and we should have a link in the chat for you to be able to find all those. Clearly, we've only just scratched the surface of this topic. If you're hungry for more, please visit kornferry.com. I hope this has given you all food for thought and maybe ignited some debate. Sadly, that's it for today. But if you can't wait until next time, fear not. If you want more on this topic and many others, as I said, just go to kornferry.com. You can also find us on our social media channels, or why not sign up to our weekly newsletter, This Week in Leadership, for all the latest insights. I'm afraid that's it. So until next time, goodbye.